More violence in Somalia as a car bomb explodes outside a busy restaurant in Mogadishu. We'll have a live update. Rocked by migrant deaths, Europe debates boosting the rescue operation. And one of Hollywood's most well-known personalities tries to hide an embarrassing secret. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Now, tragedy was avoided when Italian Coast Guard rescued over 440 migrants at dawn Tuesday, 80 nautical miles southeast of the Calabrian coast. The Italian Coast Guard says the migrants were crammed aboard a wooden vessel, which was intercepted by officers after it started taking on water. Italian prosecutors have ordered the arrest of 2 survivors of Sunday's migrants boat disaster on suspicion of people trafficking. Authorities have identified the suspect as the vessel's Tunisian captain and his Syrian first mate. They allege the duo was in command of the severely overcrowded boat when it capsized with as many as 900 people on board off the coast of Libya. The head of the European Union called the 28 EU heads of state into emergency session to confront the unprecedented migrant crisis.
We carried out 2 arrest warrants of suspected traffickers. We are talking about the captain of the capsized and a member of the crew. We charged them both with favoring illegal immigration, and the captain was also charged with reckless homicide.
Well, meanwhile, Italian rescuers continued to search for survivors in what could be the Mediterranean's deadliest known tragedy, raising pressure anew on the European Union to meet demands for decisive action on the growing crisis.
Rescue boats arrived in Malta Monday, carrying their grim cargo. On the dockside, lines of hearses waited, ready to take away the 24 bodies on board, just a fraction of the estimated 750 people who drowned off Libya Sunday. A group of survivors looked on as the bodies were unloaded. Hosting his Maltese counterpart in Rome, Italy's Prime Minister Matteo Renzi compared the smuggling of migrants to the historic African slave trade and proposed unspecified action to target the traffickers inside Libya.
In Libya, the conditions to achieve peace through a military intervention at this time are not met. We talked about targeted interventions to destroy the criminal racket that is outside any control.
200 kilometers south of the Italian island of Lampedusa, the search continues, but hopes of finding more survivors are diminishing fast. Survivors say hundreds of people were locked below deck. European Union ministers meeting in Luxembourg proposed a 10-point plan to address the crisis, including doubling the size and funding for the existing Operation Triton patrol. EU President Donald Tusk says the plan will be discussed at an emergency meeting of EU leaders Thursday.
Some of the topics that we will need to address as a matter of urgency are how to stop the human traffickers that cynically earn money by putting the migrants' lives at risk, how to step up our combined efforts of rescuing people in need, how to better help the EU member states most affected, and how to step up our cooperation with the countries of origin and transit.
But there are divisions. Britain supported scaling back search and rescue operations in October. British Home Secretary Theresa May emphasised the need to stop the people smugglers.
It is right that we are all deeply concerned at the appalling loss of life that has taken place. But our focus must be fairly and squarely on dealing with the callous criminals who lie behind this vile trade in human beings.
The EU ended the so-called Mare Nostrum search and rescue operation over concerns it was encouraging more migrants to make the journey. But already this year, more than 21,000 immigrants have arrived on European shores. The numbers show that people will risk their lives no matter what, argues Andrej Mahecic of the United Nations High Commission for Refugees.
The push factors have all along been far stronger than pull factors. For us, the key priority at this stage is to have an adequate replacement for the Mare Nostrum, for the search and rescue operation.
The tragedies are not confined to Italy. In Greece, at least 3 people died, including a young child, after a migrant boat hit rocks off the coast of Rhodes. Migrant groups say calmer seas in the summer months will see many more dilapidated boats making this deadly journey to Europe. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Now on to East Africa. A deadly explosion has killed at least 10 people at a busy restaurant in the center of the Somali capital, Mogadishu. Police say a suspected suicide bomber drove a car filled with explosives right into the business. The attackers hit the small restaurant that is popular with government officials at lunch hour. And a group has claimed responsibility for that attack. Well, meanwhile, Somali President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud says Monday's deadly Al-Shabaab attack on a minibus carrying staffers of the UN's Children Agency is an attack not just on the United Nations, but also on Somalia and its future. President Mohamud says the attack confirms his view that Al-Shabaab is interested only in promoting what he called its own extremist agenda. A source close to the UN in Garowe tells VOA that a man raced onto the bus and detonated explosives strapped to his waist. Now, for the latest on the attacks in Somalia, Abdulaziz Bilo joins us by phone from Mogadishu. Abdulaziz, first give us an update on the numbers, if there is any.
Well, just like you said, what we have so far is that 10 people have been confirmed dead following today's deadly attack against a local restaurant in the capital, Mogadishu. More than 15 people are also hospitalized, some of them with serious injuries. Apparently, the Al-Shabaab group has claimed responsibility for this deadly attack that happened exactly midday here Somalia time, when most of the locals in the city were headed home or were headed to nearby restaurants to have lunch. So we can see that the Al-Shabaab deliberately targeted this hotel because it's opposite a central hotel where they launched a previous suicide attack in February that killed almost 25 people. So this is the second time that they've targeted the proximity of the hotel, central hotel, that is famous with members of parliament and famous with the Somali lawmakers who are normally living in that part of the city.
Now, Abdulaziz, we know that there was a time that the government claimed they had pushed Al-Shabaab out of Mogadishu. We've seen these attacks in the last few weeks. What's happening from what you hear?
Well, from what we've been able to gather so far is that the Al-Shabaab is not confronting what it calls, and I quote, their enemies, that is the Somali government and AMISOM. They cannot confront the government in the field, like in the other regions that they're controlling. But they're targeting soft spots and soft targets in the capital. Like we've seen recently, they've attacked a hotel, Makkah Al-Mukarram Hotel. They killed dozens of people there. They hold the place. They hold the place for a while, and then they make sure that they have a large number of deaths in return. And then they've also targeted the Somali Ministry of Education. They were 2 suicide bombers and 5 attackers, all of them killed. You see another third event in Garowe, where they attacked United Nations officials, United Nations staff working with UNICEF. They attacked them in broad daylight while they were come to work. And they've also attacked Garissa University, another soft spot target. So we can see that the Al-Shabaab is losing its power. That's why it's targeting soft targets inside the country and outside the country.
Very quickly, does Al-Shabaab itself say the objective of their recent attacks?
Well, they've never said their clear objective. Their clear objective remains the same. They want to create a different sort of government in Somalia, and they don't want to see the African Union forces in Somalia. So definitely they don't have a clear agenda, and they don't have support from the Somali people.
Wow, Abdulaziz, thank you very much. Abdulaziz Bilo reporting for VOA from Mogadishu in Somalia. Now, an Egyptian court has sentenced former President Mohamed Morsi to 20 years in prison in connection with the 2012 killings of protesters. The presiding judge announced the verdict for Mr. Morsi and other Muslim Brotherhood leaders Tuesday. Morsi was spared a possible death sentence because the court ruled that he and 12 Muslim Brotherhood members were guilty of intimidation and violence, but not murder. The charges stem from clashes outside the presidential palace that started with Morsi's Islamist supporters attacking demonstrators who were protesting a decree declaring his decision could not be challenged by the court. Now, in an effort to curb xenophobic violence, South Africa is deploying its army to the township of Alexandria in the country's biggest commercial city of Johannesburg, according to the nation's defense minister. Meanwhile, the Malawi government is repatriating its citizens from South Africa, where attacks against foreigners have killed at least 7 people and injured scores. The first group of Malawians fleeing anti-foreign violence in South Africa arrived in the southern city of Blantyre on Monday. Anti-immigrant attacks flared days after Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini said in remarks reported by local media that foreigners should leave South Africa. He has since said his comments were misinterpreted. Now, for more on South Africa's government response, Mark Maharaj, a spokesman for South African President Jacob Zuma, joins us by phone from Pretoria. Mr. Maharaj, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you very much for having me on your program.
Yes, now we see the latest is that the army is actually going to be deployed to Alexandria. Are things getting worse or better?
Things are stabilizing, but let me make it clear. The government of President Jacob Zuma is in the middle of an intensive campaign against xenophobia and in order to uphold our commitment to peace and friendship amongst all our peoples. That campaign has 2 prongs. The immediate one of normalization of the situation, which requires at the front line the action of the police, supported by the army, in certain areas wherever there are hotspots. That is happening and it is stabilizing, but we need to be on guard to ensure that we have an environment where we can address the longer-term issues.
Now,
in that regard,
yes,
yeah,
Mr. Maharaj, people are saying there are certain underlying causes for this sense of xenophobia, which recently now is being actually referred more to as Afrophobia. How are those issues being addressed?
Well, firstly, we must make it clear that the overwhelming majority of South Africans are peace-loving. They are not involved in this violence. That there is a minority that is exploiting the xenophobia. And we need, as part of our campaign, to isolate those elements and let the voice of the majority come through. We need to build a sustainable partnership, and that is what President Zuma is spearheading. We are very clear that violence can never be tolerated and that South Africans themselves love peace. They have lived, they have worked for, and they have struggled with their neighbors for decades against colonialism, for freedom, and against apartheid.
In targeting
and
those...
they have lived in peace.
Yes. Mr. Maharaj, in targeting those...
tomorrow, for example...
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, President Zuma will be hosting a stakeholder meeting of South Africans to discuss the country's migration policy, how the various sectors can work with government to promote orderly migrations and good relations between citizens and nationals. The President intends to build lasting partnerships with stakeholders in South Africa to ensure that the shameful attacks on foreign nationals do not recur and by managing migration better. Day after tomorrow, President Zuma will be hosting a meeting of organizations representing foreign nationals in South Africa. They'll be discussing the same issues from the perspective of the experience of the foreign nationals. And during the course of this week, President Zuma has instructed ministers and deputy ministers to engage with the communities in different parts of the country so that they become seized with the issue of our migration policies, the problems that we are facing, the problems that foreign nationals are facing, as well as South Africans.
Mr. Maharaj, thank you very much, and we definitely will call on you another time. Mark Maharaj is the spokesman for South African President Jacob Zuma. Well, now, onto the Gulf of Aden. The Pentagon is deploying a U.S. aircraft carrier to join other American warships in the waters near Yemen. A spokesman says the U.S. Theodore Roosevelt and its escort ship, the USS Normandy, will ensure that vital Gulf shipping lanes remain open as the security situation in Yemen worsens. The White House says it has evidence Iran is supplying weapons and other support to the Houthis. Now, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, building a stronger and healthier Africa. Stay with us.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Well, it's time now for Tuesday Health Report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu. What do you have for us today, Lino?
Hello, Vincent. Well, the U.S.-based organization Corporate Council on Africa recently held a health forum with the theme Building a Stronger, Healthier Africa. The gathering included U.S. and African private sector companies, African health and finance ministers, U.S. government officials, and other key stakeholders. Among other things, participants discussed investment and development opportunities in the African health sector and leveraging lessons learned to build health systems. Dr. Isaac Malonza is country director of JPIGO, Kenya, and one of the panelists. He elaborates on some of his organization's strategies in improving health systems.
In strengthening health system, the first thing that we need to look at is are the governments investing in half in terms of the health budget at an annual level. In Africa, there is a recommendation called the Abuja target that African governments committed themselves to invest 15% of their annual GDP into health. Currently, many countries are still below 5% of that investment. Staff shortages is a major issue, so focusing on training, pre-service education, getting enough healthcare workers to be able to deliver the services that we want is extremely important. And then once you have that, you then need to focus on the package of services that healthcare workers need to be able to deliver, quality health services. That the other missing challenge is we do not have facilities in some of the hard-to-reach areas in Africa, and that's something that my organization has been focusing on and working with the ministries of health to be able to get the healthcare workers and the system to respond to the hard-to-reach areas. So either through outreaches, mobile facilities out there, or what we call reverse referral, where we get highly expert doctors to be able to periodically work in rural areas so that they can be able to deliver those services.
Now, Dr. Brima Kargbo is Sierra Leone Chief Medical Officer. He says a weak health system and other factors were detrimental in the onset of the Ebola outbreak in his country.
When it hit Sierra Leone, it was there for a few weeks before the health system actually got to act. This was because the community systems that were there were not so strongly linked to the health system for them to be able to report. The second area also concerns our health surveillance system to be sensitive enough to pick up any of these abnormalities that may occur in any of the peripheral areas for rapid action. Of course, you don't forget the patient and healthcare worker safety. This is very important because in the initial period of the infection, we saw a mutual distrust of the populace to come to the health facilities, and also our staff equally were afraid of touching patients because they were not adequately prepared for what we were having there.
Joining us now in the studio is Dr. Faya Milimuno, a university professor and political activist in Guinea. Mr. Milimuno, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
So you were in Guinea, you live in Guinea, you were there from the very beginning of the outbreak. First of all, you came in the United States not long ago. Can you give us a sense of how things are right now?
Thank you for having me. I mean, in Guinea today, the situation is improving, thanks to everything that is being done by the international partners. The United States have spent nearly $1.5 billion to help those three countries. And thanks also to what the World Health Organization has been doing. More importantly, what the medical workers in Guinea, the heroes for us, because it is because of them, they were the first to pay the price, and they're still paying the price. The situation is improving, but you still have a lot of challenges ahead, because actually you still have new cases in the capital city area and the neighboring cities like Forêt-Karia, Koya, and so on and so on. And you still have some resistance from people.
So after a year, we've seen that in Liberia, we can say perhaps there is somehow a success story there, because today there's no new cases. But Guinea and Sierra Leone are still struggling with the outbreak. Tell us about how things are being handled.
I mean, the situation could have been better today if from the beginning good steps had been taken by the government, by everybody on the ground. On the international side, you have to be thankful to the Doctors Without Borders, the World Health Organization, and many other non-governmental organizations that comes in to help. On the government side, we should know that at the beginning of the epidemic, there were a problem of trust between the governments, and it is still the problem. People have the tendency to think that everything the government says is a lie.
Why is it so?
That's traditional in Guinea. You know, politicians in our country, the government in Guinea is used to lying people.
Okay, these are some very strong allegations. But we saw in the report earlier with Dr. Carbo from Sierra Leone, he also talked about the problem of trust, where the patients were a little bit fearful of going to the hospital, and even the doctors were scared of touching the patients. So trust is not just a problem of trust is not just the case in Guinea.
It's not just in Guinea. It's not just in Guinea. Is right. But here is the problem in Guinea. When you talk about Guinea, they tell you it is a French-speaking country. But you have hardly 20 to 30% of people speaking French.
So they speak in local language.
Local languages. Where the ground zero of Ebola happened in Gekedu, in that village, I could say no 5% of people could speak another language.
So what do you, because we're running out of time, what are your suggestions? What do you think should have been done better, very quickly?
First, the government should not be in the position of denying at the beginning, because you have followed the situation, the debate, they denied at the beginning that Ebola was in Guinea. And today, when we see that the number is small, it should be taken very carefully. What should have been done is, from the beginning, to recognize that Ebola was here.
All right.
And also try to involve everybody, local leaders,
and
religious leaders, and so on.
Okay, Dr. Milimuno, unfortunately, we're running out of time. There is so much more to talk about, but that's all the time we have for today. We have to leave it there. And that was Dr. Faya Milimuno. He's a university professor and political activist in Guinea. Thank you for joining us. Now, that's our Africa Health Report for today. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Leno. Be sure to watch Leno Madu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, how one of Hollywood's most famous directors tried to hide an embarrassing detail about his past. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Now, the fallout from the WikiLeaks publication of the hacked Sony emails continues. The latest drama involves Oscar-winning actor-director Ben Affleck, who requested that the PBS documentary series Finding Your Roots not reveal he had a slave-owning ancestor. Harvard scholar Henry Louis Gates, host of the show that traces the ancestry of well-known guests, said in a separate statement that they didn't censor the slave owner details. Instead, more interesting ancestors of the actor emerged, and Gates chose to highlight them in October's segment featuring Affleck. They said in the statements posted on the PBS website. Stay tuned on that and in other less controversial Affleck news. Well, here's your first look at director Zack Snyder's anticipated superhero sequel, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, in which the two legendary DC Comics heroes will face off. Dawn of Justice will see Henry Cavill reprise his role as Superman opposite actor and director Ben Affleck as Batman, a choice that split many fans of the franchise. The film is scheduled for release on May the 6th, 2016. And finally, the top trends exhibited on the catwalks of London, Paris, and Milan are now making their way down to the stores, and they are not just for women. On Rodeo Drive, one of the world's most famous shopping streets, men's boutiques are now becoming just as popular as stores for women. It's a response to a growing thirst for man-friendly fashion around the world, and it's not just the clothes that are becoming more extravagant. At the Montage Beverly Hills Hotel, clients can get the VIP shopping experience thanks to a so-called customized shopping excursion that will set you back $1,500 for a half a day or $2,100 for a full day. And that's what is trending today. That is our show for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. We are able to touch on things that are important to people on an everyday basis. Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. In a lively half hour, News, sports, health, lifestyle information, comments from our viewers. Africa 54, the best for Africa, about Africa. Join us only on VOA.